According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, an oligarchy is a government in which a small group of control, especially for corrupt and selfish purposes. The Daily Beast reports that Google searches for the word skyrocketed after President Biden delivered this warning during his farewell address.
An oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead.
Meanwhile, major tech corporations boosted their donations to Donald Trump's inaugural fund in recent weeks. And the world's three richest men, tech billionaires Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg, are all expected to attend the inauguration. Joining us now is MSNBC political analyst Juanita Tolliver. She's the author of the new book, A More Perfect Party, The Night Shirley Chisholm and Diahann Carroll Reshaped Politics, and MSNBC political analyst and New York Times investigative reporter Suzanne Craig. Welcome to you both.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We put the books on the table, by the way. We just so people can see.
Vanna White's
okay,
Suzanne,
you get a new book. We will put your book on the table as well. Okay, we sell people's books out here.
You left out here. Come on.
We got you. We got you. Okay.
Thank you.
I want to know. Hands raised. This is what they do in the debates to get people in trouble. Raise your hand if you were surprised that Joe Biden called out the oligarchs in his speech and the ultra rich and the techno-industrial complex in his final Oval Office address, because I was frankly happy to hear him naming the thing. Now, I don't think most people know what oligarchy means, and so we have to be very specific. But this is a threat, I think, Suzanne, but I don't know if the American people are wrapping their minds around it in the way that you would if there was, like, a bomb outside, right? Or something that they can feel, see, and touch that they think of as danger.
Well, smart. I'm glad you guys defined it at the top, because I think when people hear the word, they think of Russia, or they think of a Bond movie or something, right? I mean, a lot of people don't really understand what it is, and the definition is somebody of great wealth who has huge political influence, and I think that's what we are seeing right in front of us, and I don't think people really do have a good grasp on. I don't think that that's what they voted for, and we're seeing it, though, unfold in real time, and it's really since the election you've seen these tech guys. They've come down to Mar-a-Lago to bend the knee. They are giving huge amounts of money at this point to the inauguration. They're going to be on the dais. And these are people who have a lot to gain by doing this. And also, if they don't cozy up, there's, potential of retribution. There's a lot going on. But, these are men who their companies have contracts with the government. Some of them are under investigation by the government. I mean, that could be easy. There's a lot going on when we see these guys coming to Trump and opening up their wallets and writing checks.
Can I just add one more thing to that, though? Because in addition to writing the checks, they control things that people in this country and across the world use
and that is
daily
the rub.
And hourly. How we consume news, what access we have to information, also how we shop online, right? That is something that affects every single person. And I appreciate President Biden emphasizing that the threat is not confined to Donald Trump. It's the people he's surrounding himself with that have invested interest, as Suzanne said, in policy, specifically tax policy, which we know Trump is fixated on, and trade policy. This is all an effort to coordinatedly line their pockets, which we know Donald Trump is drawn to. He's drawn to power, he's drawn to control, he's drawn to money, and that's what this represents.
And they also, I think, importantly control, in some cases, not just the news we consume, but exactly how we see it, because they control the outlets.
So I think this entire point was driven home by Senator Bernie Sanders, an exchange he had with Trump's Treasury Secretary pick. Take a listen.
I'm just asking you, would so few people have so much wealth and power?
But
do you think that is an oligarchic form of society?
Senator, I think it depends on the ability to move up and down the income.
No, that's not really the answer. I mean, even if you had that mobility, no matter who those individuals might be.
I think, Michael, it is critical for Democrats to be able to articulate what it is that this means for average American people, right? It's not about the fact that these guys are wealthy. It's about the amount of control and influence that they have and what that means for all of us.
Well, it is, but look. They couldn't communicate the fact that they had an infrastructure bill that passed the country. They couldn't communicate what they did on inflation. So I damn sure know they're not going to be able to communicate and define a word that people have to rush to Google to find out what it is. But I think what they can illustrate is hardened examples of everything we're talking about, Suzanne, and that is what the New York Times is reporting. Elon Musk expected to use office space in the White House complex. The space anticipated for Mr. Musk's use is in the Eisenhower Executive Office building, which is adjacent to the White House. The location would allow Mr. Musk, who owns companies with billions of dollars in contracts, to your very point, with the federal government, to continue to have significant access to President-elect Donald J. Trump when he takes office this month. So to Bernie Sanders' question, yes, this is an example of the very thing in front of us, that this oligarchy is being built in front of us. It is now well positioned on the White House complex, right literally next door to the White House. And Elon Musk will have access every day in and out of that complex, given the billions of dollars of contracts that he have, running Doge, not examining his own contracts, but doing the bidding of Donald Trump and himself. What are we to make of this, Suzanne? How do you explain that to the American people?
Well, that's a big question. It's just another level of access. I mean, when you think about where he is going to be positioned, I mean, unfettered access. He is the rich on most lists in America. He's the richest man in America. Since the election, his net worth has only gone up, and now all these other people have come to the forefront in one way or another. Not only is he going to have that office, they are all going to be on the Diaz on Monday. Many of the tech billionaires are people in the top on those top lists. And then you just think of Trump himself. The other piece of this is, how he's going to enrich himself. And I think a lot about that. And I've, with my colleague Russ Buettner, we've written a book on his wealth. And it just sort of seems quaint. Russ always used to say when we were writing the book, Trump, one of the ways that, just there's so many potential ways to get him money. And, we spend so much time thinking about it and fretting about it. But one easy way, even now, just book a hotel, room of hotel suites in his, one of his resorts, and don't show up to get him money. And now you sort of look at all the ways that people can get him money, and it's just seemingly like it's increased. Like that idea is almost quaint compared to now with all these licensing deals that he has, that he's doing. LIV, the Saudis are hosting golf tournaments at his golf courses. There's so many ways seemingly now to be able to get him money as a piece of this discussion just about, the billionaire class.
Can we pull up the numbers of what Amazon, Google, Meta, and Microsoft have given in past inaugurations in past years, because I think it helps sort of give you some context of where you're seeing huge jumps. So, for example, Meta in 2017 and 2021, they either wasn't listed or they didn't give. In 2025, they give now $1 million to Trump. Juanita, I want you to talk about those numbers. But I also, in the context of your book, want you to talk about how Shirley Chisholm saw all of this.
Oh, 100%.
She understood that Democrats needed to radically first reimagine their own party.
Yes.
So that then they could radically reimagine this nation.
Reimagine this nation around class as a unifying component, because one of the things that she was well ahead of her time on was getting corporate money out of politics. She proposed this in the 70s. No one listened. They rejected the messenger. And here we are today. I think the real issue when it comes to class, though, is that Democrats have to understand the frame of they not like us. Listen to Kendrick. paint that picture for the American public, because literally any of these billionaires saying like, oh, you can have what I have, absolutely not. They're not worried about eggs. They probably haven't been grocery shopping in decades. They aren't worried about insurance claims being denied. They're not worried about keeping a roof over their head or rebuilding their homes that were lost to a wildfire. Connecting to the people, listening to their needs, understanding how everyone should be heard. That was the core of Shirley Chisholm's work. And that's why her policy ideas were so ahead of their time. Poverty alleviation work, like a basic family income. She proposed again in the 60s and 70s. Localities are just now testing this out. This is a defining opportunity for Democrats to pick up that mantle and make sure they are connecting with the people in tangible ways and defining these billionaires as people who have nothing in touch with your reality.
My favorite part of A More Perfect Party is it begins with a literal party.
With Diane Carroll, Shirley Chisholm.
It is
Love it.
so cinematic. All right, Juanita Tolliver.